What is going on, family? Welcome to Skin in the Game. It is your boy, Austin Thompson, aka OZ. And we are back with another episode. Super excited. Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy week, Christmas week here. Just enjoyed time with the family, enjoyed time, at my parents' house, and then spent some time with my wife's family, my in laws. So yeah, it was a good time. And I hope all of you had a great Christmas as well and got everything that you ever wanted and dreamed. And if not, just if not, there's always next year. Similar to this Chiefs season, there's always next year. So, but yeah, man, I am super excited today. We've updated the logo. Shout out ChatGPT, updated the layout for the live stream as well. And I'm just excited, man. I'm just really excited. We've got a good show today, including maybe having a special guest on within 15 minutes or so. Very familiar face to the show. I'm not seeing, let's see if the live is working. We are working, so that's good. So let's share it to groups just to make sure. But yeah, very excited. Very excited for the stream today. We are going to talk about kind of the future of the Chiefs and mentioning how the future is now. That's kind of the title that I came up with for this show. Is the future is now when it comes to looking for 2026, 2027, and that includes this last game against the Raiders, Week 18. That also includes this offseason, and that also includes into the draft. This is a huge next 4 to 6 months for the Chiefs where they have a real chance to turn the tide, if you want to call it. This was a down year, but a lot of dynasties go through something like this where they need to retool. This isn't a rebuild year for the Chiefs. It's a retool offseason, and you're hoping that when Mahomes comes back from his ACL, LCL tear, hopefully he comes back week 1. But if he doesn't, it's okay. I think even missing the first few games shouldn't hinder the season, but you're hoping Mahomes puts in the work, gets back week 1, and you have to make almost not a perfect offseason, but an incredible offseason to really turn this team around, because you can't waste any more years of Patrick Mahomes' career. It's not okay to waste a year of Patrick Mahomes. So the future is now, not looking 10 years from now, not looking 5 years when the stadium gets built. The future of the Chiefs is now. So we'll talk about the Week 18 game against the Raiders and kind of how that ties into the future. We'll also discuss some draft talk. We'll talk about, the Chiefs possibly having a top 10 pick. It's looking really good, which hasn't happened in about 12 years or so, 13 years. I think the last time they had a top 10 pick inside 10 was when they drafted Eric Fisher number 1, and then they drafted Mahomes at 10. So those are the kind of last top 10 picks the Chiefs have had. And then we'll finish with kind of the takeaways from the season. And like I said, we'll have the special guest come on in about 15 minutes or so, and we'll bring him in and have some good talk and just kind of catch up and we'll talk Chiefs. So let's dive into Week 18. So playing last week, it looked like from just the numbers on paper that the Broncos should have came out and just destroyed the Chiefs. You're playing your third string quarterback, and in theory you were projecting to play younger guys, which that's kind of the purpose of the title of this episode, is talking about the future is now. We want to talk about playing younger guys going forward to get them reps and to see what you have working with going into the offseason, seeing if, Jeffrey Bossa can turn into that linebacker where you can replace for Drew Tranquil, or see if Jalen Royals can be a solid wide receiver 4 going into next year. You want to see these things because the season doesn't mean anything other than for pride. Yeah, there's incentives and things our guys playing for, but for the most part, it's pretty much you're playing for pride. There's nothing to play for, so why not play the younger guys? So give credit to the Chiefs, even though we want them to lose for draft stock, getting a better draft pick. They put up a good fight against the Denver Broncos. And to me, what that showed more that the Chiefs put up a good fight is that Denver is not as good. And Denver, it seems to be like that first round exit playoff team. That's definitely what I'm feeling from the Chiefs or from the Broncos, is that they seem like fraud-ish. They seem like the Chiefs last year, where they won a bunch of one-score games, and I just think Denver's worse than the Chiefs were last year. Denver's won a bunch of one-score games, played tough teams, but one-score games, and they just seem like a team that's going to lose in the first round. I mean, I'd be shocked if they made it to, the AFC Championship game or something like that. But the Chiefs put up a good fight. The Chiefs put up a real good fight against the Denver Broncos, which great defense. And you saw some life from guys that you didn't think were going to play. And that's the problem that I have with what the Chiefs have done these last 3 games versus Tennessee, versus the Broncos. And we're hoping to see more in the Raiders, but I don't have my hopes up. But you got minimal snaps from guys that you maybe are putting some weight on your future for. For instance, like Rashard Smith, only getting 5 snaps, not even carries, guys, 5 snaps. Jalen Royals, less than 5 snaps or 6 snaps. Jeffrey Bossa, 6 snaps. I mean, these are guys that you are hoping can be key contributors, if not starters, in some areas, possibly next year, or at least high-level role player guys. And you're not giving them any snaps in meaningless games. That's the problem that I have. And Andy Reid is just a notorious guy he doesn't really trust rookies. He trusts veterans. That's why you see a lot of Juju Smith-Schuster getting a lot of playing time. You'll see, Pacheco's getting more carries. You'll see a lot of Kareem Hunt. He trusts veterans over the younger guys. And so that's where it's kind of like, it's one of those things that you got to be able to balance as a coach, as a head coach. And just it's disappointing because you want to see those guys get good reps. These last 3 games, they weren't against very good teams other than Denver, but those are valuable reps going into a down off season, that you could have some light at the end of the tunnel and be like, well, 2025 season wasn't great, but at least we got to see we got to see Jeffrey Bossa do something great, or we have good ideas about Rashard Smith and what he's going to do for the organization going forward. There's a lot of just, again, the Chiefs have just chose not to do that, and that's what's disappointing. And that's why a lot of Chiefs fans and myself are pushing the future is now. The future is we need to be playing these guys right now. Esapole, he should be getting as much playing time as possible. Jeffrey Bossa, as much playing time as possible. Rashard Smith, Jalen Royals, Jaden Hicks. I mean, there's a list, guys, and let me pull this list, because there's a ton of guys that you should see getting a ton of snaps in this last game against the Raiders. You should see at least snaps from Noah Williams, who I left out, stud, and he should have been playing way more this year than what he's been playing. And he might be your number 2 corner going in next year, depending on what you do with McDuffie and Jalen Watson. So he played great. And shout out to Christian Fulton, who didn't get any playing time basically all year, and then had maybe one of the best games you've seen from a DB for the Chiefs against Denver. And he played great. And now you have an opportunity where you might actually pick up his second year and bring him back on the team. You might have him as on the team for next year, which that's such a win, even though he's expected to make big money. But you may not have to pay Jalen Watson anymore, or you may not have to pay Trent McDuffie, and you can move Trent McDuffie and not feel bad for it. So there was good outcomes from getting guys that haven't had a chance to play. Like I said, if you got Noah Williams out there, you have Christian Fulton, and maybe you only have to go get Jalen Watson and bring him back, and that's your starting 3 for next year. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's not horrible, or at least from what the small sample size that we've seen over the last few games, it doesn't look horrible. So that's why it's important. That's why it's important to get these guys playing time. Ashton Jelani, that guy should be playing every other snap. Jared Wiley, you're looking for a Kelsey replacement. You're looking for a key contributor to be that Noah Gray role going into next year. If you don't get a Travis Kelsey replacement and he does retire, and let's say you don't take a swing on a Kyle Pitts, or you don't take a swing on Sadiq from Oregon, Well, why not give Jared Wiley a minute, get him some snaps and play him and see what he can do. If you are going to roll into next year with Noah Gray as your number one tight end, which if we are, that's a problem. But if the Chiefs do, you would at least like to see what Jared Wiley can do as your number two tight end. There was one play I remember from the season. He converted a fourth down, and from when Noah Gray had that concussion and was out a few games. But other than that, like this is what I'm talking about is these guys that haven't had a chance to play and these guys that haven't had any playing time, they truly should be the ones getting every snap. And the biggest contributor and the biggest probably winner in this kind of stretch of games is probably Christian Oladuka. That guy might be QB2 going into next season. I mean, he has a very similar style to Mahomes. It reminds me of like structuring your team like Lamar Jackson, and they had Huntley. He was the backup. And so you basically had, I'm not saying Huntley was Lamar Jackson, but the prototype of Lamar Jackson and Huntley as a QB1, QB2, where if Lamar Jackson does get hurt, you could bring Huntley right in and you can run the same plays. You don't have, let's say, Gardner Minshew, for instance. When you bring in Gardner Minshew, your offense kind of changes to Mahomes. But now when you look at it, and it's Christian Oladuka being QB2, now you have the option to almost, like I said, I'm not saying he can do everything Mahomes can, but he's the same prototype quarterback. So Christian Oladuka being QB2, now you don't have to change the playbook. Now we're not having to run maybe simple plays, or you can still do your rollouts and things like that because he can move. He can get out of the pocket. So Christian Oladuka has probably, he's probably got himself a roster spot going from practice squad to maybe quarterback number 2 going into next season. And that's what I'm saying is, guys, the young guys need opportunities. They need opportunities because you're going to see things that surprise you. You're going to see things that you're like, wow, I was not expecting that at all. I was not expecting that from Brashard Smith. I was not expecting that from Esapole. I mean, look what we got. Esapole had to come up the practice squad, and now you're thinking about putting him at right tackle starting next season. You're thinking about starting a guy who was on the practice squad at right tackle next season, at least in your mind. I'm not saying that you're going to, but you're thinking about it. It's again, and that's what the whole point. The whole point is to see what you can do because, Brian Cook's a guy that's going to be a free agent. We talked about last week. There's a bunch of key free agents. Brian Cook's one of them, and I want the Chiefs to bring him back. But if the Chiefs decide to let him walk, let him go, you don't know what you fully have with Jaden Hicks because you're not giving him snaps. You'd rather give them to Chamari Connor, who's horrible in situations that don't matter. Like Jaden Hicks should have played every snap last game. He should have been the other safety next to Brian Cook. Same thing with Isaiah Pacheco. I get that you are trying to be loyal to some of these guys. Maybe some guys are going for incentives and you want to help them get to these incentives. I get it. But you have to look towards the future. And that's why the title is The Future Is Now. And so Brashard Smith should have had 20 carries against the Broncos. Jalen Royal should have had 8 targets. I mean, you have to see what these guys can do. That's the problem, is that Andy Reid has just remained loyal to guys that are not good. And the Chiefs organization as a whole has done that. As a whole, they have remained loyal to guys that they should have let go. We've talked about it before, but this organization has remained loyal to guys that, yes, have contributed to Super Bowls, have made plays in Super Bowls, and deserve to get paid. But it's one of those situations where it's like you have to be the bad cop. You have to be the Patriots. That's what the Patriots did. That's what Bill Belichick was so good about. Robert Kraft was so good, is that they would squeeze you like a towel, wring you out as much as possible, and then see you. And they weren't going to overpay. They weren't going to give the Patriots would not have given Nick Bolton the contract that he got. The Patriots wouldn't have gave Trey Smith the contract that he got. And I'm talking about the Tom Brady Patriots. I'm talking about the Robert Kraft, the Dynasty Patriots. They wouldn't have gave Trey Smith his deal. Creed Humphrey wouldn't have got the deal that he got. Harrison Butker, no way. Because you have to remain flexible if you want to have a longevity. This offseason is going to be horrible. when it comes to cap space, when it comes to, I mean, Brett Veach, if Brett Veach wants to earn his check, this offseason is where he earns it, because you're going to have to restructure so many guys. You're going to have to cut so many guys, and you're going to have to hit on every pick in the draft to remain competitive, or we're going to be back here again, and the Chiefs are going to be 9-8 next year off Mahomes, and you're wasting another year of Mahomes. So Clark Hunt has to be aggressive. He's getting his brand new stadium. It's time to spend money now, though. Yes, the stadium's in the future, but it's time to spend the money now. So that you have to want to win now. You have to want to continue to develop guys now, because the Patriot way worked for so long, and that's why they were a dynasty for 20 years almost, was because they were able to make those hard decisions. Now, the Chiefs have not. And so that's where this offseason, hard decisions are going to have to be made. And that's why I believe you'll see it, guys. You'll see some of your favorite players may be gone. My wife gave me this Rashee Rice jersey. Shout out to my wife. She gave me this Rashee Rice jersey for Christmas. Rashee Rice might be on the trade block, guys. Do not be surprised. That wide receiver room is not good. And I'm not saying that I would rather have Xavier Worthy over Rashee Rice. I would choose Rashee Rice over Xavier Worthy. But the issue is that Rashee Rice has value. He's going to have value because his contract won't be as high because of performance, injury, off the field issues. And a lot of teams are going to be possibly interested. And you might be able to turn a guy that you drafted in the second round, you might be able to get back a second round pick. And that's a good deal, because you've basically got a second round pick as a rental, and you got a second round pick back. So you got to look at things more than just being a fan and thinking every guy is your favorite player and they're never going to leave. There's just, you have to be realistic, and the Chiefs have to be more realistic. They have to be more cutthroat is the word that I'm looking for. The Chiefs are going to have to be more cutthroat more than ever. And that's why the people that love McDuffie, sorry, guys, more than likely he's going to get traded. It just makes too much sense. I don't know if you can get a first. I've been seeing online and people have been commenting on my videos about, oh, McDuffie, every other corner traded recently has been for at least a first, if not two. It's different because McDuffie is due a deal, and he has to go to a team that wants him. Because if he's going to get traded, if you're going to give up assets, he has to go to a team he wants to sign with. Because they're going to pick up his fifth-year option and then trade him. And then you're hoping the Chiefs can get, let's say, a second round and a third round pick. You're hoping for a first round pick. But whatever team he goes to, which I think a few teams, just throwing it out there, don't be surprised if you see the Rams. Don't be surprised if you see the 49ers. I would imagine the Chiefs would either trade him to a very low AFC matchup team, or I would imagine that they would trade him to probably like the NFC, some NFC team. They're going to trade him to the NFC. That's what I would imagine. So don't be surprised if you see Trent McDuffie get traded. Don't be surprised if you see Rashee Rice get traded. Don't be surprised if you see Leo Chenal not get re-signed. Don't be surprised if you see, somehow if the Chiefs can maneuver Chris Jones and get him removed, his contract off the books. It's a tough deal, but if you could trade him for somebody takes on $25 million and you get a 6th round pick back, it might be worth it. But if the Chiefs want to continue the dynasty, if they want to continue to move forward and be that kind of dynasty like the Patriots were for that 17 to 20 years, the cutthroat decisions just have to be number one priority. They have to be number one priority, because you can't do what the Chiefs did. And maybe, let me take one step back, because if you had a magic 8 ball and you could go back and it's like, look, if we make these deals and do these things, I know the Chiefs are going to win 2 Super Bowls and go to 3 in a row. Would I do that? And I would say yes. Like, all this being said, everything that the Chiefs have done, every decision that they've made, every player that they brought in and signed has worked out, where you're pretty much one bad game away from going on a 3-peat and winning 3 Super Bowls. So as much as I'm talking crap and as much as I'm not a GM, I'm not that, but what I can see is I have a sample size of what the Patriots did, and the Chiefs didn't do that. Now, the Super Bowls were worth it, but now you're seeing the downfall of kind of what the decisions the Chiefs have made. You're going to see what's going to happen over the next 2 to 3 years, because you're going to have to restructure these contracts. You're going to have to do all these things. And so it's just important that the Chiefs, that Brett Beach has to earn his check this offseason. He has to earn his check, because being cutthroat is the only way that you're going to see a full turnaround. And side note, as much as all I've said about this and this offseason and how the future is everything, I don't think that they're going to do anything that I said. And we'll get into that more. We do have a special guest waiting in the lobby. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. But all right, so you guys know who it is. Let's move on. We're going to move to the next segment, but first we're going to bring in the one and only, very familiar with the show. He goes by the Great Bambino. I'm just kidding. None other than, let's see if we can get him in here, Nicholas Mignon, ladies and gentlemen. Clap it up for him.
Can you hear me okay? Is my AV team working?
It is. Yes, I can hear you good.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't.
You're Mignon.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't have exactly enough time to get my full setup going, but just here to talk some chop. You know what I mean? Let's chop it up.
I like it. So I just kind of went on a whole spiel about how the future's now.
Yeah.
So my idea behind this was essentially the Chiefs need to start looking at some of the younger players, Brashard Smith, Jalen Royals, Jaden Hicks, some of these guys that were rookies or second-year guys that haven't got snaps. And basically, these last 3 games, when they officially knew they were eliminated, when Mahomes tore his ACL, it should have been, you should have seen Brashard Smith get 20 carries a game. You should have seen Jalen Royals get 10 targets a game. And it's frustrating because last game you saw Brashard Smith had 5 plays, not even 5 carries. He was on the field for 5 plays. You saw Jeffrey Bossa, a guy that you're hoping could be a coverage linebacker for you, had 6 snaps. You saw Jalen Royals, who you're hoping could be a lower end wide receiver 3 for you next year, wide receiver 4, got 6 snaps. What do you think about kind of the moves the Chiefs have decided to go to finish the season by letting the veterans, letting Juju play 90% of the snaps, letting Isaiah Pacheco continue to get carries? What's the thought about the Chiefs doing that and not pressing on these younger guys to get snaps?
So I think ideally, it's the situation plays out exactly how you were talking about, where, we get some of those younger guys and guys that haven't got enough playing time, a few more, game day snaps, and, have them play at that real speed. Because obviously the other teams that we've played so far have been playing full strength for the most part. So just giving them those live, full end of the season snaps, but quality snaps. But I think that part of it is what's happening is, for someone like Pacheco, I think I just don't see the Chiefs bringing him back. I think that there's a way that he walks somehow. And so probably for him, I'd imagine that, he's playing as much as he can, or going to continue to play just to try and bump his stock a little bit. And, it might be a scenario where it's kind of like, he's maybe earned that because he's the starter, or him and Kareem obviously are 1 and 2 sort of, but he's sort of, he has sort of earned that, option to at least play out the rest of the season and again, bump your stock, see where you can go. If he were to have amazing breakout games these past, these last few games, you'd almost wonder maybe then if the Chiefs could bring him back for cheap or whatever. But he hasn't really, it's not been a crazy explosion in the run game for him or anything like that. And I don't want to like just hyper fixate on the Pacheco situation, but just thinking like, some of these guys are just going to bump their stock as much as they can because, and they probably get first dibs in a way. I'm sure there's some kind of seniority to the amount of snaps that you get and things like that, because I'm sure that the coaching staff would probably want to see some of those younger guys get some snaps. But I'm all in with what you're saying though. And I think that, I think as soon as the Mahomes thing went down and he tore his ACL, it was just like, just play all the third stringers and
right.
best case scenario. So first of all, just give all the veteran guys that we need, a rest, which they sort of have. I don't know how serious like Rashid Rice's injury was when he sat out. I have a feeling that's kind of what they're doing is, maybe he's not, maybe he's a little sore, but let's go ahead and put him on the inactive list.
Right.
There's no point. Now, someone like Worthy, even like, I don't know what the risk would be of going out there and getting injured. Like that's kind of where I'm at is like some of these guys you're going to have to bring back. You're actually relying on them to make an impact next season. I personally, this is not the mentality probably of these professionals. And I totally understand that, like, that they are high performers at an elite level and everybody wants to play no matter what. And I get that. But just from like a fan perspective, a strategic perspective, it seems like, some of those guys that get the starting snaps, there's really no reason for them to get injured if we're going to need them next season. And not only that, by playing those extra, third string guys, you're going to see, again, those real-time snaps, like what people have, what do they got in them, and are they actually cut out to make like the day one rosters and things like that next season. So, Jeffrey Bossa, that's a guy that I liked in the draft a lot. I think I remember, last season on the podcast or the beginning of this one, whichever it was, when I was last on, that we were talking about that. And he was kind of like my favorite, like hidden gem of our draft. Obviously, maybe the coaches haven't seen that yet, or, sometimes in Spags defense, I've noticed that it kind of takes a year for the guys to catch up to speed and then they'll jump in. Same thing happened with George and even I think Nick Bolton. Obviously, he's only gotten better, but and Jaden Hicks, like he's kind of getting better and coming on a little bit more too. So maybe it's just ramping up the reps gradually.
Well, this is a situation that hasn't happened. This is a situation where you could ramp up those reps because you're not fighting for a deep playoff run, and you don't want to play the rookies then or guys that you don't trust.
Yeah, exactly. So it just it feels like an opportunity for those guys, and who knows, maybe these next we have 2 games left, 1 game left,
one against the Raiders.
Sorry, I'm disassociated from it. I'm like, and I think in part I'm like, the season's over already, like 1 game left. So
I know it feels kind of crazy. It feels like it's gone by so fast.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was going by fast and slow all at the same time, just because like it was
for the wrong reasons.
Like, basically like, are we gonna make the playoffs? And then now it's just like,
get it over with.
But I think I was backstage virtually, when you were talking about basically like how cool it's been that we've been able to have 3 Super Bowls in these past few years, and I totally agree with you. I'd trade anything for. I mean, there's no trade that doesn't make sense. There's other franchises that have gone longer without having one, or they only have one in so many years, and we've been fortunate enough to have 3. So, all in all, we've just been extremely fortunate as fans to be able to like witness this. It could be the golden years. It could be like, and I think we've talked about it before. It's like we may be living or may have been living in the Chiefs' golden prime. I mean, you think about like the 49ers, and yeah, they're good. They're starting to get better now. And they've had little spurts here and there, but like their golden years were, Joe Montana and Steve Young, and when they won all those Super Bowls, and they haven't necessarily been like the top of the, cream of the crop since then. And that may be another 50 years or 40 years or 20 years for the Chiefs to be that thing. And 3 Super Bowls to take away from that, is no shy thing to it's enough to write home about. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Right.
Nothing. It's not nothing. And I think that going out there, I see like a lot of like Chiefs fans, like, we're definitely probably spoiled in that sense. And
Definitely.
on the flip side, though, and I'm sure you've mentioned this, and this is how I feel. It's just not wanting to waste the opportunity of a prime of someone like Patrick Mahomes. And at the end of the day, I think I texted you this, but it just when Gardner was playing, and even now that oh my gosh, it's
Oladukin.
Oladukin is playing as well. It just showed mainly with Gardner because there's a lot more of like the other starters and stuff playing, but it just showed like the total difference that Patrick Mahomes make, and he was just like he actively was putting this team on his back. And as much as like he's had a down year this year probably, and he made a lot of mistakes. Don't get me wrong, he made a lot of bad throws, but at the end of the day, the reason that the Chiefs were even close to being in the position that we're in is because of him. The same exact roster. You put Gardner Minshew in or any other backup like style quarterback, like tier 2 quarterback in the league, or even like a mid-tier starter. And I think that the Chiefs are worse. I mean, the Chiefs are we're looking at a top 5 pick. And I'm not saying that that's not the talent that we don't have, but he single-handedly, in my opinion, is putting the team on his back. Could he play better at times? Absolutely. But all the point I'm trying to make is that we don't want to waste his prime years. Like when you get a once in a generation player, maybe a once in an all-time player, which we probably is true, that you don't want to waste that. You know what I mean? Like we got to, unfortunately, milk it for all it's worth. So I don't know. I went on a rant there, but
no, it's a good point because I've seen a lot of comparisons of Mahomes' career at this point to Russell Wilson. And so, he had this really hot start and then just kind of basically goes down versus the Brady arc, which was started way low and then skyrocketed up. And so what I don't want for Mahomes is that the Chiefs made all these moves, spent all this money, did all these things to get those 3 Super Bowls, and then the next 10 years of Mahomes is mediocre because it kind of gives off that like, and we're arguing about this 30 years from now or 20 years from now, and Mahomes hadn't won a Super Bowl in 15 years after he retires. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have that same like, oh, Mahomes' prime was great, but yeah, he played another 10 years after his last Super Bowl and didn't win. It gives that kind of like, it's not the same as it would be like when for Brady, who Brady would, consistently, he did have that gap, but he showed when he was young and then he finished strong. And that's what you kind of want to see is you want to be able to finish strong because it helps the narrative. It helps a lot of the narrative when you finish strong, except for some reason, Michael Jordan, but that's a different, that's a different show for a different podcast. So
let me get on that one.
But so building for the future, I want to move on to the draft talk and we've been kind of texting back and forth a little bit just about prospects that we like. We're not huge. Like I'm going to be able to tell you exactly who goes where and what prospect is good for the Chiefs. I know the big name guys and I know what I want them to do. I sent you a mock draft today and there's a few guys that like have sparked my interest and it kind of depends on the situation. If the Chiefs lose against the Raiders and the Saints, I think, beat the Falcons, I think is the next matchup for this Sunday. Yeah. They will lock in the 8th pick.
Yes. Yeah. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think they lock in pick number 8, which is pretty huge for a team that, you can add a player, a blue chip prospect onto your team. And if Mahomes comes back week 1 ready to go, I mean, you're looking at it's just kind of scary. It reminds me of like this year in the NBA, there's a possibility the Thunder get like a top 6 pick because of a trade they made 4 years ago, and they're going to probably win back-to-back titles. So it's like you're adding like possibly, depending on who you pick, you're possibly adding like a blue chip to like a Super Bowl roster in a sense, depending on moves and things that they make in the offseason. But a few guys that I think, and it depends on what they do, because if there's certain guys not there, I would almost be willing to trade back. So, for instance, at pick 8, I'm not a big guy on Jeremiah Love. I know that's all I see is the Chiefs are going to take Jeremiah Love. They think he's like Bijan Robinson. They think he's Jahmyr Gibbs. All of these different things. I'm not sold on taking a running back so high. And I don't know if I've told you kind of my my thinking on it. So here's my thinking. So if you have two prospects, edge rusher and running back, you get them in the first rounds. That means you get them for 5 years. Okay. For the rookie deal, you get them for 5 years, and then you have to decide if you want to re-sign them or not. So, but let's say both of these guys are, I don't want to say top tier talent, but let's say they're very good. Call them A players coming out as rookies, and they're going to turn into maybe stars one day. The reason why I would rather choose edge over running back is because if you choose running back, and yes, he's a star, you have to still fill that void of needing an edge rusher for the Chiefs. And so that means you have to go spend 20 million, 30 million, whatever it takes to get a top tier guy to pair with Chris Jones. But if you hit on the draft as an edge rusher, and let's say he isn't a guy, a guy that you can put next to Chris Jones, you can, he can get to the quarterback, and you have to go spend money on a running back. Well, now you're only spending $12 million on a run. Saquon Barkley is one of the best running backs in the league, makes 13 million. So you, in a sense, you're spending half or less on a running back for the value that you would get, or spending 30 million on an edge rusher for the same value. So it's the logic takes that you have to hit on the pick. So there is a little bit of maybe false logic to it. But my theory is basically that running back is just a not as value position. I think it's growing. I think it's coming back just because of the way the league is moving. But I don't think it's a value position compared to edge rusher, especially what the Chiefs need, and especially what you can get in free agency.
Okay, yeah. I hear that point, and I don't disagree. Let me hopefully I can articulate everything. So, to your point, I mean, because if we get a great edge rusher, then that's like a day one impact, and that's fantastic, right? Like, and I also think that the life of an edge rusher is potentially much longer than a running back. Like,
Very true.
You're going to have less critical injuries, or at least the likelihood anyway. Because obviously as a running back, you're taking those hits all the time. As an edge rusher, you might get a chop block or something like that and mess up your knee, but the chance, or a shoulder or whatever, but the chances are a little bit slimmer probably. So like that's to your favor, probably, to your point. But I feel like like you're talking about value, and I agree, because I think that's a valid point, that like the contract difference is going to make a difference, like how it affects the roster in the long term and all of this other stuff. But at the same time, like, do you and I like honestly think that, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but do we honestly think that Mahomes is built to last as long as like someone like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers?
And I hear that side of it. I do hear the side of, especially Mahomes coming off the ACL.
Right.
He's got to go version 2 now, where you do need a run game.
And that's like a separate factor or a variable. But so in that case, I think about it like, okay, like let's say that Mahomes has got maybe, I mean, to your point, 5 years of like prime time, Mahomes magic or whatever, where he's still like a top 2 quarterback or top 3. Then, the value is important, but at the same time, winning right now is important, like as soon as you can. And I think that is important. Like, I think that there's a weight to that. Like, we have to win right now. We can't necessarily, and I don't think that the Chiefs are planning on this, and I don't think that you think this either, that we're going to rebuild. Like, we need to restructure the offense. We need to retweak it, but we're not going to do a full rebuild, because they know that we need to win right now. And, I think that, getting someone, both of those, an elite edge rusher and an elite running back can both potentially make a day one impact. But, and then this brings me to like my second point, like what my justification for someone like a Jeremiah Love is that, we do need to restructure and Mahomes needs to evolve in the way that we've talked about, like off the air before, in that he needs to become a little bit more of a traditional quarterback. Like what's been his superpowers is that he's not a traditional quarterback. He makes these crazy plays that Chris Collinsworth goes crazy about, right? So like that's what he's known for. But at the same time, like there's been so many times where I feel like we could just get so much value from him playing more like a Matthew Stafford, playing that play action and, having a little bit more stability in the pocket and just being able to make those passes, be more accurate. And, he's still, now obviously someone like Matthew Stafford's still slinging it, but he obviously does not play like Patrick Mahomes. But, Matthew Stafford has had a pretty like long tenured career, and Mahomes is off to a better earlier start than Matthew Stafford is, right? Or has had.
Right.
So him evolving, I think, depends on us developing the run game more, which it was obsolete this year, and we saw that. I think it made an impact on how Mahomes was able to pass, because the defenses knew that we were not going to run the ball, and we were not effective at running the ball. Even though I think we could have been more effective at times. Anyway, that's a different thing. But the point being that, like, I think that we need at least elite performance. It doesn't have to be Jeremiah Love, and maybe it could be a second or third round running back that we get lucky and hit the jackpot on, right? But I think we need elite performance from our running back, and having that is going to take the pressure off of Mahomes and, allow him to have more free time in the pocket to make more accurate throws, to not scramble around, have to do the crazy stuff, and coming off an ACL injury, and forever from now on, I mean, that, you can recover from an ACL injury, but that's always going to be a factor and something that, that has happened to his body, right? He's always going to have that scar tissue or whatever it is, on his ACL, because, that's just that serious of an injury. And so, the idea that he needs to evolve in how he plays, I think is no question. And I think that the way we do that is establishing a dominant running game. And we think about somebody like, think about this year and in general, someone like Josh Allen, who I like Josh Allen. I think that if I could have any other quarterback in the league other than Mahomes, I'd have Josh Allen. But I personally think Mahomes is still better. And, it doesn't always not always head to head or whatever, but just in general, I think Mahomes is better. But this year, Josh Allen did have the advantage of having someone like a James Cook that could run the ball and take a ton of pressure off of Josh Allen and him being in the pocket. The other example is someone like Lamar Jackson, who Mahomes is leagues better than Lamar Jackson, right? Definitely as far as passing goes, that's what we're talking about here. And he has a Derrick Henry that can go off at any time. To your point, Saquon, obviously Mahomes is leagues better than Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position. And so these guys, they've got these elite running backs, or at least top 10, that can, free up the passing game. Daniel Jones completely written off. And I think that probably has to do with coaching too, but has a running back like Jonathan Taylor in the background or in the backfield, and looks totally, different this year with the Colts, right? So I feel like, and I'm not spitting anything new. Obviously, if you have a good running game, it's going to free up the passing and all that stuff. And you can't always have both. But I think this is one of those rare opportunities where we possibly could have both. We could have a top 10 running back talent, which Mahomes has never had. We had Clyde, but he was a late first rounder. And let's not forget, speaking of Jonathan Taylor, we passed him over. So we could have had him too. And, that's besides the point. But just saying that he's not a top 10, he wasn't a top 10 player, wasn't ever going to be a top 10 pick. Someone like Jeremiah Love might be worth that. So I don't know. I think that's all the points I wanted to hit, but I don't know if that made sense or not.
It does, and I hear the logic. I do. I harp on the part of Mahomes coming off the ACL. He's got to reinvent himself. So giving him a run game, speeds up that process, especially. But the value part of it that I look at is it's like the cost per like the cost per production is kind of what I look at it. When you can get, if they do take an edge rusher, they do take a D tackle round one. And would you rather have, let's say it cost 25 million to get, I don't know, I want to say Trey Hendrickson, but I think he's more expensive than 25 million. But let's say it's a very nice number two, not George Karlaftis, a better number two than George, where you would have Chris Jones in the middle, solid number two, and then George could be a number three. You have that's a solid D line for how much money that the Chiefs have available. Would you rather spend that, or would you rather spend and get two running backs and a wide receiver three, maybe like a veteran wide receiver that you could bring in for that same price? And what I mean by that is because if you hit on the edge rusher, you almost can use the money that you would use on an edge rusher to fill holes that you need on offense, which would be like getting a running back like Tyler Algier as your goal line running back instead of Kareem Hunt, who's younger from the Falcons. That'd be your number two running back. Brashard Smith would be your number three. And let's say you go spend some money. I don't know who's available, but a higher end guy to bring in, or we make a trade, do a sign and trade with the Jets for Breece Hall, something of that nature, where you could spend that 25 million, fill three different holes. And let's say you go get a veteran wide receiver who you need to maybe help train, help bring up the wide receiver room. That's not Juju, that's not Hollywood, but somebody better. And you could get those three for the same price. And then you draft, let's say, David Bailey out of Texas Tech, or you take Peter Woods from Clemson to put next to Chris Jones. And now you have that guy cheaply for the next 5 years. Or you have a Jeremiah Love who, to your point, may have a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. We see what's happened to Pacheco. Pacheco had a 1,000-yard season. It's the only 1,000-yard rusher Mahomes has had in his entire career. Kareem Hunt didn't even have 1,000. He had that crazy season his rookie year, but Mahomes was sitting on the bench. So Mahomes has never gotten that guy. You're right, but I think just spending that much capital, especially when it's such a high pick, it's one of those situations. Like, I feel bad for Brett Veach because you can't miss. Like, if you miss on this one, you are like it's a bad situation because you're just hindering going forward. So you got to it almost makes me feel like you have to make like a safer pick than actually to go like more edgy. And Jeremiah Love might be a little more edgy as far as like the type of pick, just because it being that high. There's another one, Caleb Downs, the guy from Ohio State. He's the safety at Ohio State. A lot of people have him up in the draft boards, but if you look, like the safety position is not valued. It's like running back almost, like it's second to corner. And it's different. And so to add on to my point about, edge rushers, and there's a possibility the Chiefs are going to trade Trent McDuffie. And so it's like, do you go spend money on a corner, or do you try to beef up your D line because your D line can now get to the quarterback? You don't need as good of corners as you once did. When Snead and McDuffie were that tandem, a lot of them hid the flaws in this D line. And now you're seeing the repercussions of what that was when you paid George Karlaftis, when you brought back Derek Nani, when you brought back Mike Pennell, when you extended Chris Jones. But next year that contract is it looks horrible. It's a contract you can't even get off of. You're going to have to just hope Chris Jones at 31, 32 years old can be Chris Jones of 27 years old. That's like things that that's the position the Chiefs have put themselves in almost. And so that's why this first round pick, it's just, you have to hit. You can't miss, or you're really screwing yourself.
Apart from the fact that, that we just haven't had a top 10 pick in a decade or whatever, more than a decade.
Yeah, since Mahomes, basically.
Yeah. So, so not quite a decade, but close, so, you don't get these opportunities. If you win, then you don't get these opportunities. And so this is that rare year where, like, we're still, in potentially the prime roster, we're going to get that pick. And, you're right. You're absolutely right. It has to hit. Now, something that I do agree with, or to your point, I also think that, like, the outside pressure of drafting an edge rusher is going to be less for that player. and for Veach probably than the pressure for a running back. Like you draft a running back top 10, everyone's like gonna be ready for Adrian Peterson. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's gonna be like this guy.
Like, if he's not, it's a miss. If he's
Yeah,
not that guy, then it's a miss.
versus, getting an edge rusher, the fans and the fans for that player and then the fans justifying that pick are going to be a lot more like, well, he could develop because sometimes
Exactly. That's
edge
exactly what I was
rushers,
thinking.
they can take time to develop. So that goes a little bit against like what I was thinking, and it's not really against because like I'm totally not against an edge rusher. I don't know about a D tackle. I think I told you I'm like if it's not like a is it Jordan Davis from
yeah, no, I know you're talking Davis from the Eagles. I forgot his first. I think it's Jordan Davis.
Yeah, Jordan Davis. That and he was a beast in college at Georgia. Like he just knew like this guy is a freak. Like
if it's not that or Jalen Carter.
Yeah, Jalen Carter. Yeah, like those type of guys. And I don't know enough. I watched a decent amount of college football this year. Maybe not enough to be an expert on it, so I could be wrong that one of these guys is a freak that's top 10 D tackle, but it's not like a generational type of thing. And then, but to that point, that's a little bit of like my hesitation on the edge rusher too. Like, I don't know that any of these edge rushers on paper are like because when you think about guys that are like that, it's like even, and I don't know that Abdul Carter had like the year that maybe we might have expected him to have, but you think of like even when Myles Garrett was drafted, is like there was just high expectations, I think, from the jump. And I don't know that the edges that we're looking at are that kind of like once in a lifetime D end.
They're not. I mean, Reuben Foster out of Miami, I think is his name. He might be. He seems to be like the number one. Right. But like I don't think that's within the Chiefs' reach. I think the only guy that is probably considered is the David Bailey guy at Texas Tech. And I don't know if he's, like I said, we may watch college football, but we're not experts.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's that generational guy. So to your point, I don't know if it's, I'm not going to hate as long as they don't pick some random guy or they go offensive tackle or something. I don't know if I'm going to be like super upset. Yes, the offensive line needs help, but I think there's other positions that need help more than offensive line.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as I was thinking about this, I haven't formulated it as a complete thought. So like, as I say it, and you may like, I'm open to like swaying this, but I mean, I feel like there's less chance or less saturation of elite defensive ends than there is running back. Like you have the top defensive ends in the league, which is like TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, maybe Bosa when he's healthy.
Micah Parsons, things like
Micah Parsons. Yeah. Thank you. So like, you have those players. And I guess, and it's hard because as I'm thinking, it's like, running back is also like it's been trending downward. To your point, I think it is going to start trending upward because naturally it's going to go in waves like spread offense. And then you're going to get running backs that can run through that because everyone's lighter and trying to, match up with pass. And so the running backs will be able to eat and then it'll flip back someday to pass again, probably. So, to that point though, I think I think running backs will be trending upward. I don't know, like, does that make sense? Like, do you feel like there's more quantity of quality running backs than there is defensive ends or, edge rushers?
I don't know about the class, but in general, like in the general population of the NFL,
yeah,
I think it's harder to get an edge rusher. I think it's harder to get like a top 15 edge rusher, whether drafting or signing, trading. Like, I mean, you see what the Packers had to give up for Micah Parsons, and so to get that is going to be hard. So that's why I'm saying like you're hoping that you can get a guy next to Chris Jones that could be at least a number 2. I think the reason why I just don't value running back is one, because of their shelf life. I think the shelf life is short. You're one injury away from being Isaiah Pacheco, essentially missing out, going to pick up Kareem Hunt off the couch and losing your job. I mean, that's one thing. And two, I think you see a lot more teams have tandems of running backs where it seems like every week you see a new name of a running back and it's like, who is this guy? Like you don't, and it's not necessarily like a bad thing. It's, I'm not hating on the guy, but it's just, I think there's so many. You're going to start, like you said, the league's going to trend to running. You're going to see teams with 2 and 3 guys. You're going to see, it's going to be the unit of running backs on teams instead of the Jahmyr Gibbs only, or the Saquon Barkley. That stuff is going to go away. The Derrick Henry. Once those guys are done, I think you're going to see much more. So it's just one of those things that's like, what's more like the point that you made is what I think I resonate with most is if you miss on Jeremiah Love, it's going to be like everybody knocking at the door, calling it a bust, saying it's a horrible pick. But if you miss on, an edge rusher, you have a little more time. You get, George Karlaftis has got multiple years of, let's see what he does next year. Let's develop. And now you're finally getting like, he sucks after year 3 or 4, whatever it is. Not that he sucks, but he's just not living up to what you hoped as an edge rusher. So it's like you have a little bit more leeway and not to necessarily make a mistake because you have a little more time. But it's also, I also think Jeremiah Love could be the next Bijan? Maybe. If you do hit on a Jeremiah Love and he turns into a Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, the Chiefs would be unstoppable at that point. Yeah. So it's like, do you take the risk? I don't know. It's tough. To me, I would, if I'm in the position, I'm taking the best player available, no matter what, whether that's whatever you think that is as a GM or Brett Veach, whatever he thinks, whatever that is, that's what I'm doing because there's a lot of holes to fill anyway. So you might as well just take the best available. And hopefully maybe somebody slips to you that, what sucks about this class versus maybe some other ones is that there's not a lot of quarterbacks. There's not a lot of high-end quarterbacks that people are going to be trading up for, that people want. So, it's probably going to go quarterback, and then that's it. And then it's like, all right, best defensive lineman, best offensive lineman, best this, best that. You're going to, like, by the time you get to pick 8, you're almost in the next kind of group of guys.
Yeah. And
so if it was a better class that had more quarterbacks, you might see the Chiefs be able to swing the best edge rusher at 8 or the best, best receiver or whatever it is. You might be able to swing something like that if there was more quarterbacks because they would go so much earlier. But it's just unfortunate, but it is what it is. So you just, I don't know. It's tough because you got to look at it so many different ways and so many different angles. And you want to fix the offense. And a lot of people do because they want to get back to that high flying or at least some kind of stable offense. But then it's like, is it coaching? Is it play calling? Is it all these things? And the other, this is kind of my last point on the defensive line kind of edge rusher thing, is that I think a lot of defense, if the Chiefs are going to go to the chopping block and just, hey, we're cleaning house, kind of see you, Matt Nagy. Hey, thanks for your help, Drew Tranquil, and start just letting these guys go. I think the defensive side of the ball is going to be the side that gets more cuts than the offensive side of the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if next year most of the offensive line is the same, if not all of it, except right tackle. Mahomes, you're going to have Rashee Rice, you're going to have Xavier Worthy. If Kelsey comes back, if not, you may see an upgrade there, or you might just see Noah Gray take over. And then running back. Yeah, that running back and right tackle are the only thing that's really going to change for the most part, unless you hit some splash on a receiver. Defense is what I think you're going to see the most change. And that's why I think adding a contract that is cheaper and a possibility to be a star or a talent is why I would just choose defense.
And I had this thought just that as you're talking about that, and this is more like posing a question. Do you think that if Travis Kelce announces his retirement before the draft, that we draft his heir apparent this year? And because when are you going to get, and the thing is with tight ends, unless it's like Brock Bowers, which shows that that's a value, like that was a high value and smart pick to pick him where you did. Sometimes with tight ends, you can get really good ones in the second and third round. Historically you could. Now tight ends have been trending upward also because of the hybrid nature of them, whatever. But like, do you think that if there's that value of a tight end where it's like, because again, how often do you get a top 10 pick? If we're looking number 8, top 8 pick, top 8 player, and if a top 8 caliber tight end is available, do we just go ahead and not miss a step because we know how important the tight end position is to the Chiefs offense?
So
or
it
do
just
we wait the
depends.
second round? You know what I mean?
Right. So if you're dead set on Sadiq, because that's, I think, maybe one of the only tight ends that is probably going to go in round 1 that you're thinking is Brock Bowers-esque. Like he's the size, he's the pass catcher, that kind of guy. The two options that I would do is either one, if the Chiefs are just dead set on getting that guy, I think you trade back a few spots. I think you call up somebody and say, hey, you want to move up to 8 or 9, we'll move back to 13 or 15. And then I think you could get Sadiq at that point. If you somehow can work McDuffie to get you a first round pick this year, I personally don't hate Jeremiah Love and Sadiq, going, 9 and 15. I think Dallas Cowboys have pick 14 or something like that right now. Like let's say I think they have 2 first round picks. You send McDuffie to Dallas, who just let Trayvon Diggs go.
Yeah.
And you get pick 8 and 14. Do you just solidify your offense for the next 5 years? Maybe. Or do you go 1-1 and take defense and offense to make sure you get at least one chance to hit on both sides? I don't know. But that's the only way that I would take Sadiq. I think that, me personally, I still have some hope in Jared Wiley. I think Jared Wiley, I loved him when he got drafted I think he went to Texas Tech?
TCU.
Oh, TCU. Yeah, that's right. So I loved him coming out of college because he's a big guy, catch the ball, can block.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that was when he came out, I was like, that's Travis Kelce's replacement. And then he tears his ACL and sits out a year. And then this year he kind of getting back into the groove, but playing third string, not really, doing anything.
Yeah.
So I was still big on Jared Wiley. So I don't necessarily hate that if you pass on Sadiq, but if Sadiq's there and, the Chiefs just think that he's the next thing, you just got to do the trust and Veach, shoulder shrugs, because, he's deciding that the tight end is very important. Like you said, it's an important piece to the Chiefs offense. I just don't think they'll do that. I think that they're going to trust Noah Gray, I think, if Travis does retire or if Travis comes back, but they're going to trust Noah Gray. I think that they're going to try to give him a shot. And then you're hoping that Jared Wiley can be your number 2. And then they'll probably go pick up some veteran, or Robert Tonyan probably be brought back again and he'll be number 3 or something like that. I would be shocked if they did that, just because, again, it's such a high pick. Even if you did get 8 or 14, if you traded with Dallas and got 14, that is such a high pick. Yeah. That is, like, there's so many positions that you need to fill. And it's just like, is tight end the most important on that list? It's hard to say.
Yeah. I have another trade pop, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to derail the show if you got some other things going on.
No, we're good.
One more trade proposition. Let's see if you would take this, because we've kind of mentioned it, and I put some pieces together. So what if, because they lost Sauce Gardner this year, the Jets ask, or we offer them, whatever. Would you do this? Would you do even, or maybe with some sweetened deals on the side, Trent McDuffie for Breece Hall, and then whether it's 1-for-1 or adding here and there a little sweeten, like little added sweetener?
So it would have to be a sign and trade for Breece. So they're gonna, he'll probably sign like a 3-year, $45 million. So you're gonna pay Breece $15 million a year, which is fine if that's what you would do. But I would want draft capital out of it too. Not necessarily a first round pick, but I mean, I don't think you're going to get that, but if you gave me Brees and a third and a fourth or something of that nature, around there, second and a fifth, something like that, I'd do it. Yeah. I do it because you're filling the running back position and you're just getting more picks. The Chiefs only have 6 picks this draft. In a draft that you wish you had 10 picks so you could replenish some of these positions and let some of these contracts go. And unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do all that because they don't have as many picks. And so I would take whatever you can. Like if you could get, and this is something I don't think, like, not hating on any Chiefs fans that might not fully grasp, but what McDuffie's value's worth. But McDuffie, I don't think you're getting 2 first-round picks for McDuffie like Sauce Gardner.
No.
And the reason why is because 1, the position, McDuffie plays slot and he's undersized. 2, Sauce Gardner had already signed his contract extension. So he was under contract when the Colts traded for him. So they know that they're getting Sauce Gardner for the next 5 years or whatever. McDuffie is going to pick up his 5th-year option and have to sign a contract. So if you trade him, you're going to pick up the 5th, and then he has to choose, I'm going to sign with the Jets. So there's some devaluing of that if he's not going to choose, if he's like, I'm not going to the New York Giants or I'm not going to, Vegas. So the team that he's like, yeah, I'll go to the Jets, let's say, they know that they have some leverage because they can't send him anywhere else because nobody's going to pay for him. You know what I mean? So I think getting Brees Hall is probably worth like they were trying to do in the middle of the season, like a 3rd or 4th. There was talks that the Chiefs were trying to trade for Brees and they were offering a 4th and the Jets wanted a 3rd. I think Brees is worth somewhere around there, which is fine. So basically you'd be getting a 3rd-round pick, but an established guy. And then you get, let's say, a 2nd and a 5th. So a 2nd, 3rd, and Brees Hall. That's probably as close to the value as you're going to get if you traded him somewhere else, not for a player. Because yeah, you maybe get a 1st. Like the first thing, I'm kind of iffy because it reminds me of like the Tyreek Hill situation. When Tyreek Hill got traded and I saw that draft capital, were you not underwhelmed a little bit at the time?
Yeah.
I think you're going to see if and when Trent McDuffie gets traded and it's for draft capital, I think it's going to be like, that's it.
Well, and unfortunately, I don't think that he had like the show out year that would bump that up this year. So,
right. Well, and unfortunately, again, it's one of those situations where it's kind of, what have you done for me lately? And on Thanksgiving in front of 55 million people got dunked on like 8 times, by George Pickens.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just one of the situations. I think it's tough, but I would do, yes, you're hypothetical. I would do that. I would do that because you solidify the running back. I think you still get draft capital and you still get good picks. Like if you got a 2nd or even a 3rd and a 4th, like a 2nd and a 5th to me is like equal to 3rd and 4th. Like you're still getting good value, around that. So anything of that kind of caliber mix, I think it's worth it because you were interested in him during the season. You're probably interested in the off season trying to bring in Brees Hall, and 2 birds, 1 stone. You bring in a guy you want and you get a guy out of the door that has value.
Yeah.
Now, to ponder on that same question though, something that would stop me is that if you can get Brees Hall because he's going to be a free agent, then why would I do that? Why would I trade with the Jets when I'll just sign him, move money around to sign him, make the draft cap or make the salary cap work, and then I'll just trade Trent McDuffie somewhere else to get better picks. So as much as we say that could be a possibility.
Sure.
But okay, so to finish the show, I kind of want to I put takeaways as kind of like the title of it, but we're coming to an end. It's New Year's Eve tomorrow, going into 2026. I want you to give me maybe your like hottest take or your takeaways from this year's 2025 season. I'll go first to give you some time to think. So my kind of hottest take or the takeaway that I have is, and I've said it before, and I'm going to say it kind of more harshly this time. Matt Nagy does deserve to get fired. I do think that he deserves to get fired, but I think if you took a step out and did the 10,000 foot view of the situation, all of the fault falls on Andy Reid. And I think Andy Reid is actually the one that should get fired. Now, I don't think he obviously he won't, and I'm not hating on, for what he's done for the Chiefs, all of that. But my take is because you're not going to fire a legendary coach like that, especially coming off 3 Super Bowl appearances in the last 4 years, or whatever, winning 3 Super Bowls for your team, winning one in 50 years, coming to the franchise, changing everything. He's done, but he is in a debt to the Chiefs. But no, the Chiefs are in debt to him. Sorry, not the other way around. But Andy Reid is the 51%. He says it all the time. 51% ownership. What he means is he makes the decisions when it comes to the offense, deep, whatever it is. He has 51% ownership. When he makes a final say, he says. We know that Andy Reid calls the plays. We know Andy Reid schemes the plays. It's his offense. Yes, Andy Reid Matt Nagy has a say. He probably throws in plays. He schemes them up. Oh, we're playing the Raiders this week. Matt Nagy, you call the plays. Oh, it's 4th and 6 and we need to go for it. Andy Reid's calling the play. As much as Matt Nagy is not a good offensive coordinator, Andy Reid deserves as much blame. And I think that Matt Nagy is just the scapegoat for the situation. Truly think that he's just the scapegoat. He's not technically going to get fired. He didn't sign his extension. He's just going to go get a different job, essentially. It's probably a mutual departing. They don't want to tarnish Matt Nagy and, make him not be able to get a job. But we all know that Matt Nagy was going to get fired either way or let go. And I think he's getting more brunt of the blame because of Andy Reid's lack this year. I think Andy Reid has stuck in his ways and has not evolved ever since they moved safeties too high and you lost Tyreek and Mahomes couldn't be the same Mahomes. Andy Reid has not made any evolving of his play calls, and he is just stuck to his system. You almost know exactly kind of there's like 4 plays that is like an Andy Reid special. RPO slants. It's the RPO kind of bubble screen out to Rashee Rice or something like that. Like you can almost predict kind of what Andy Reid's going to do in some certain situations. The rollout on, if it's 3rd and short or 4th and 1, Mahomes used to roll out and they would call it sprint right. And they just throw it to somebody to the sideline to get the first down. Like all of these teams have watched these things happen over the last few years. And Andy Reid's just become predictable. I heard today the Chiefs have played 27 games more than any other team in this, in this last, I think it was maybe the last 5 years or something like that over this span. All eyes have been on the Chiefs, but Andy Reid has just not chose to change anything. He's not chose to, and that's why I loved Eric Bieniemy, because Eric Bieniemy wasn't a yes man. And I'm not necessarily like saying Matt Nagy is a yes man, but in a sense, he is, because he couldn't take control of the offense and he doesn't get the reins. And that's why I think, we talked about who should the Chiefs bring in as offense coordinator. We talked about, Doug Peterson, Cliff Kingsbury, something like that. I don't want that now that I think about it a little bit more. I don't want that, because you're just basically going to get Andy Reid tree. You're getting, the Andy Reid flow down from him. I want somebody that comes from the West Coast offense. I want somebody that, like we've talked about, the quarterback coach from the Rams. I don't know his name. Give me somebody from the McVay tree, or give me somebody else. Give me somebody else, because if Andy Reid doesn't let go of the reins and he doesn't allow someone else to come in and be creative, and the Chiefs have a bad season next season, the hot seat's on Andy Reid at that point. You've got the greatest quarterback to come through since Tom Brady, and already top 3 quarterback ever, and you missed the playoffs twice. He got injured the first year, but if you miss it because he's, and he's just going to be on the hot seat at that point. And I just think this year, Matt Nagy is getting the scapegoat blame. So that is my hot take for 2020, ending 2025.
That's a good one. I mean, like, that's definitely thought pondering, for sure. I want to comment on that. Well, just to add to your point, maybe somebody from the Shanahan tree or whatever. I mean, that Shanahan McVay is kind of I don't know. I think it's a Shanahan tree, maybe, or is it McVay? I don't know.
I don't remember who came from who. Yeah.
But they're all part of that same group, and so is I think it's Raheem Morris was part of that, and obviously McDaniel. So like there's like a lot of guys like that's kind of like taking over a little bit, like whatever, people in that tree. And I think there's more, and I just can't, kind of blanket on it. But so I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think for my takeaway or hot take, which are probably two different ones, I think my takeaway is that just like, and it only solidifies, you probably knew this, but you probably could say like, oh, there's a lot to do with like the, Travis Kelce's really good and Andy Reid's really good. But I think that Mahomes, that's the takeaway of this season. Mahomes is the difference maker, right? He puts the team on his back. He just does. So that's the takeaway of this season. Without him, we're back to at best mediocre. At worst, we suck. So that's the takeaway. Hot take, because I don't think that one's that hot of a take, but hot take is, and I like him. I like what he's done for the team, but I think my hot take is that we shouldn't have re-signed Chris Jones. Now looking back at it, I think that this year there was a lot of moments where he just disappeared in big moments. And you're talking about, this is a guy who's talked about as the number one D tackle in the league or like top three, whatever. He's in that conversation, right? And every game you say, well, this is a guy that makes a difference. You hear the announcers that watch Chris Jones on this play, watch. And yes, he gets doubled a lot and sometimes tripled or whatever. I understand that. But like the Eagles game, there was no excuse for that play, that viral, just standing around. I think that was the Eagles, wasn't it?
Oh no, the Jags when
Jags, you're right.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence fell down twice and then ran into the end zone.
Yes, like there's zero excuse for that.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of times where he lines up offsides, even before this last game, which you could have, you could argue like they told him to do that to blow the game or whatever. Like what, that's fine. But even before that, there's been like some like that's like, come on, like rookie mistakes, basically. Like what, you got to know where you're at on the line. We crucified D Ford for that same thing. So if it happens in the playoffs, then, and we're talking about Chris Jones, like you got to be accountable for that too. You know what I mean? And we roast Jawan Taylor every time on the offense. So we got to hold Chris Jones to that same standard. And so, there's that. There's a bit of a lack of performance on my end. I get that you're getting double teamed. So did Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald got double teamed every single play. And I'm not saying Chris Jones maybe is the same exact, but they're, they should have been mentioned close. If the idea is that, like, as much as we're paying him, that he's a legend and all these things. So, and I think we talked about this, off the show before, but there was a lot of contracts done in an emotional sense for like the feel that we owe these players something because of what they did for us. I'm not saying that's wrong. You could argue that it's right, and I might believe you. But the fact of the matter remains, someone like Chris Jones probably got maybe too much so that we could keep him because he was part of the core the core Super Bowl group, especially on the defense. He's one of the captains or one of the leaders on the defense, right? And in that, take maybe with Travis Kelce too. And, the way that his contract was structured when we re-signed it at the time. Now, I don't know. I mean, he's still one of my favorite players of all time. I cannot say otherwise. And it hurts me to say it, but just thinking, like, if we're taking all the feelings out of it objectively, I don't know, and I guess he ended up top 3 or top 4 in receiving yards. He still got 1,000 yards, right, this season.
No, I mean, he had a great season.
Yeah, he had a good season still. So I mean, I don't know, maybe less with Travis Kelce, and I'm probably more forgiving on it just because he's like one of my favorite players. But at the same time, the amount that you're paying him, we rely on him as pretty much our number one receiver, Mahomes' favorite target. We have Rashid Rice; he's kind of the number one guy, but we don't have a number one clear as day receiver other than that's Travis Kelce, right? So you expect in a way that whoever the number one target is, can change the game, like a CD Lamb or whatever. And again, that's a different positions, but that's part of the problem of putting so much value into the tight end too, and an aging one at that. So I don't know. I mean, that's why it's a hot take. Like even me, like I'm not so sure. I think I'm a little more sure about the Chris Jones thing. Probably even, you can loop McDuffie into that and all that, but I don't know.
I mean, just to add to your point, I think there's a ton. And I went on, the beginning of the show, I went a little bit and brought some of those guys' names up, but like Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton's a guy that you paid because of what he's done. And he's a great linebacker, but he's overpaid. You paid Harrison Butker, and maybe deservingly so, for all of the things that he's done, all the clutch kicks, everything that he's done, deserves it. But now you're in a situation where he's missed the most kicks in the NFL between, extra points and field goals, and he's the highest paid kicker in the league. And you can't get rid of him because all the dead money. So, Harrison Butker, Nick Bolton, I think Chris Jones, I agree with you. It's one of those situations that you can't do anything with his contract this year. You're stuck with him, and you're just hoping that he can play good. And it's a situation where you have a chance to, you're at that point to get off Travis Kelce. But if you have that sentimental value, like, oh, come back and play one more time, and he's asking for a lot, you're going to have to figure out something. You can't just continue to overpay these guys because you're binding yourself. I think I saw something, I can't remember what the percentage is, but 8 players on the Chiefs roster take up, like, I want to say it's like close to 50%, if not more, of the cap for the Chiefs, between like Nick Bolton, Harrison Butker, Patrick, Travis, Juwan Taylor, Creed, Trey, like those 8 guys take up the majority of the cap, and you're just filling in. And you have a lot of offseason decisions to make with McDuffie. Rashee Rice is going to want a deal. You got to figure out what you want to do with that. Leo Chenal. Like, there's a lot of guys that you're going to have to try to sign. You have a crazy offseason. So it's I don't know if it's that hot of a take, because I agree with you. So, but great hot take. So, but that's going to do it, man. I appreciate you coming on. It's always fun. I love doing this stuff. So appreciate you guys watching. This was Skin in the Game. You can follow at SITG Show on all of those icons down below: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Join us every Tuesday. This one was kind of late. I had a meeting today, but we usually do them at 7. So I'm going to try to stick on that schedule at 7, but 7 to 8 o'clock, something like that. We'll continue to go forward. Nick will definitely be back on the show. So appreciate you coming on, and we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.